Welcome to the Mormon News Roundup, your go-to source for the latest headlines and critical analysis on all things LDS.
Breaking news!
Join D-Vay's
Mormon News Roundup.
That's talent on loan from Kolob every Sunday and Monday night.
We will uncover the truth behind the news that matters most to the Mormon community.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to another episode of the weekly Mormon News Roundup. I am your humble host, D-Vay's. Yes, that's talent on loan from Kolob. I am the diddly whack Mac Mormon Daddy. I am the king of the Sons of Provo. And thanks so much for joining me to discuss the contemporary events in Mormonism. This is episode 132, and it is September 22nd, 2024. Before I jump into my episode, I'd like to welcome onto my program my fabulous co-host, Brother Jones. Brother Jones, how's it going?
Pretty good. Eves, how you doing? Nice to see you. Well, I'm a lurker, you might say. I live abroad. 132, that's a rather ominous number in the Mormon world, is it not? I guess it's an appropriate number since I'm the product of polygamy. I mean, plural marriage. I mean, celestial marriage from the 1850s. My line comes through wife number 7, just so if you're wondering. But I do live abroad where it is hot, interesting, it's dynamic, it's affordable, and the food is beyond fantastic, and healthcare is cash pay, which I like. So, yeah, I pay a close attention to the Mormon News Roundup and other related news. I do some freelance language work in sort of translation and other language stuff, cultural training, and among other things. But I am married with children and have a never-mo mother-in-law who rules the neighborhood where I live. People probably wonder where I am. I am in Thailand, kind of a Mormon upbringing, seminary, mission, BYU, all of that. I had a familiar wake-up call several years ago that some are familiar with. But my exposure to people from all over the world played an important role in my life experience and my deconstruction, you might say. My hope is humanity will learn to reduce suffering. That's my quick spiel.
Yes, reducing suffering, that's a very Buddhist concept. And as you can see behind me, we have a particular temple that was opened up in Bangkok just not that long ago here. And that's why my moniker is the Thai Celestial Kingdom Explorer. How do you like my background here, Brother Jones?
Very creative. I like it. Yeah, that acquainted with that view.
I'm sure you are, as we've known. You came on to Real Talk Mormonism once upon a time, so I know that you cover and look at the Mormon news very, very carefully. We appreciate that. You've even given me from time to time some very interesting insights and some breaking news that was church-wide breaking news. In fact, you fed me the latest changes a couple of weeks ago to the LDS temple endowment ceremony, and because Thailand is so far ahead of almost anyone else, I was one of the first people to put that out there, thanks to you. So appreciate you giving me some inside Mormon scoops.
Yeah, I guess it's a little taboo maybe, but it was going to come out in the next few hours anyway. So it's an interesting development, obviously. It's sort of like 3-hour down to 2-hour church, We love getting less of what we pay for.
Actually, we're going to talk about 2-hour church here coming up. And that's one of the reasons that I put this thumbnail together here that says Thailand former insider shares LDS insights. This is the thumbnail of the episode. How do you like the thumbnail here, Brother Jones?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'll take it.
It is a handsome looking temple, though, don't you think? What do you think about that temple and the associated grounds?
There's some interesting background that we don't need to get into here, but I will say that the land that it was built on was purchased about 19 years ago. Pretty penny was spent on the whole thing. There's some really nice apartments there, I can say that.
Yeah, for the workers and for the temple presidents and for certain other people who have to travel longer distances in Thailand. It's harder to get around places. You have to take buses. It's a long period of time. So people often have to stay overnight, right? So they need accommodations. It's kind of, one of those temples that's also a tourist temple destination with lots of people coming from outside areas to view it. This ain't the Taylorsville temple, right?
That's an interesting point. In fact, well over 90% of patrons are not living in Thailand.
That's amazing to me. Yeah, we talked a little bit more about that in an older episode of Real Talk Mormonism. You can go back and take a look at that out there if you're interested in that. Brother Jones gives some fascinating insights into that entire thing. So here is our agenda. We're going to talk about LDS temple construction, which is always a big deal. We'll talk about the secret lives of Mormon wives, which is always absolutely huge out there. We're going to talk about LDS tithing refund lawsuits and also Latter-day Saints versus the Grand Old Party. There's been some interesting developments, especially in certain swing states such as Arizona Arizona. That's what we're going to be talking about here today, folks. First of all, let's talk about the secret lie. I almost said sacred wives. Secret Wives of Mormon Lives, starring Taylor Frankie Paul. This has been taking the internet by storm. It has been released onto Hulu, and it is still one of the largest news items of the week. And here we see Taylor Frankie Paul saying that she's scared to even watch her own show.
Me and Evan both binged it in one day. I don't know how you watched it, but I know you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
Are we waiting for a special type of popcorn? What's happening?
Yeah. No. So I split my kids. So like obviously 50-50, and we got back into town. I had my little time with them, and then we left, yesterday. So I just chose to spend it with them and not watch it. I really want to be focused in though, and not like having the mom and do. I want to watch it, and listen. So do time.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit anxiety up there too. Like I'm like,
not ready.
Yeah, what are you scared of specifically? I know obviously as two people who binged it in a day, you and Dakota certainly go through it. I know it wasn't easy for you. You were heavily pregnant throughout the entire season. Is there a part of you that's scared to watch the tougher moments of your relationship play back? And are you fearful that might impact your current dynamic, having to relive that?
Maybe there's a little bit of that. Like I'm like, I could be triggered easily, and so I think if I'm watching that, I'm listening to it over, and like, because I think there's a lot that's cut out though that I did. It was like a whole therapy session of lots of emotions, and so as she's saying, there's so much that's cut out, so maybe it's not even in there. So I thought in my head, I'm like scared to go like watch that again.
Brother Jones, why are people so fascinated with the secret lives of Mormon wives, and why is she scared to watch her own show?
If you were my bishop, Divez, I'd have to confess I have not paid much close attention to this. I'm aware of the show. This is just not a topic that interests me. It's so far removed for me from reality that I don't have a strong opinion about it.
Well, let me just ask you this then. Why do so many people enjoy watching this show? Maybe you're a little bit like me, and maybe we're a little too old for this show. I'm not really sure. I'm definitely following it, but why do so many people want to watch Mormons behaving badly? That's the fundamental question here.
I think it's a little bit like a car accident that you're driving by and you kind of want to see what happened, but you don't really want to see what happened. Some people want to see the bad behavior. Other people are repulsed by the bad behavior. And then people like me just kind of want to ignore it. But
people love to see train wrecks. And the crazy thing is that Taylor herself doesn't even want to watch her own train wreck. I mean, this is a hot dumpster fire, but there's also a lot of hypocrisy, in my opinion, that's associated with this entire outrage. And I saw this from Ryan Josiah over there, one of my favorite Mormon news and Mormon culture satirists here. And he talked about the fake outrage that people really have over the secret lives of Mormon wives. And I tweeted this out on X. You can follow the Mormon News Roundup. We are on Twitter. We are on TikTok. We are on Instagram, and we are on Facebook. And we're on Apple Podcasts and also Castbox and Spotify. But is there a lot of fake outrage here? This is why. We have Joseph Smith marrying underage women. We have the SEC fine. We have all of these scandals in Mormon history, and nobody seems to care at all. But then we have a couple of women who I don't even know exactly what it is that they do, to be honest with you, that makes people so mad. But a lot of Latter-day Saints out there are just absolutely floored by these women. But all these other scandals, they don't care at all. There is so much outrage over this show, and why other things that seemingly are far more important is just dead silence.
yeah, it's a strange thing. I don't really know what to say other than we do like to watch train wrecks. We're very selective, right? We humans are selective about our outrage. If it impacts us, we're bothered. If it impacts other people, we don't really care about it.
But I don't understand the secret lives of Mormon wives. Taylor Frankie Paul is not impacting absolutely anyone. No one who has all of this outrage that's associated with it. She's not in your front porch. She's not coming to your house, knocking on the door, trying to give you a Bible or a copy of the Book of Mormon. So that's why this has no impact on anyone whatsoever, which is why I don't understand all of the outrage. Now, Brother Jones, you said you didn't follow this too carefully, but I'll just give you a quick recap here. This is very, very simple. I tweeted this out, and this is every single episode of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. They're basically all of the same from what I've been watching, and this will give you a perfect sum up here about what this whole thing
I need
is
to
all
tell you
about.
the craziest freaking crap right now. I'm pregnant, and that's not even the crazy part.
I need a soda right now. I'm gonna lose it. The stress is not good for the baby. Call husband. You need to stop sending men on the internet photos of your asshole. Babe, why? Because you just do. All the girls tell me that it's not appropriate what you're doing. Hey, John. It's my probation officer. Look at this photo of Michaela drinking wine at an Italian restaurant. She's such a whore. I'm only telling you this because I'm a girl's girl, but I sleep with your husband every day. We need to go to Vegas.
Oh, what happened?
What does it look like happened, bitch? I need a soda.
I think that that's pretty accurate there. There's just a level of insanity here that is without parallel. You know, the crazy things that happen to these gals, I don't know if it's the editing together or if their lives are really like that, but there is an awful lot of turbulence, and it is really cinematic and absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And I guess that appeals to a certain segment of the population.
Yeah, I was going to say a moment ago, I think what upsets people is how widespread the show is. If it's very obscure, nobody really cares. But if lots of people are going to potentially see it, it's upsetting. There's definitely a market. I mean, it's just kind of like reality. What's it called? Reality TV. There's a market for that. Somebody can make a buck off it. Somebody's going to produce it.
Without question, this is the #1 news article of the week, even though it was premiered quite a few days ago. It was about 2 weeks ago when it was premiered. But I subscribe to Google Alerts on my email every single day. I get an alert for the word Mormon and the word Latter-day Saint. And I can tell you that the overwhelming number of news articles throughout the entire United States and the world are focused on this one Hulu series. See, a lot of Latter-day Saints are very much chagrined that all of the church news articles and some apostle ministering it in the Tooele Second Ward somewhere, or the church gives away a couple $100,000 to a food bank, or all of these other positive stories that the church has about General Conference, they receive almost no traction whatsoever. No one cares about the vast majority of what the church is doing. But then these Mormons behaving badly takes the world by a storm. And I don't know if you want to call it envy, or I don't know what you want to call it, but they're really upset that, hey, look, why can't there be news programs that cover all of the great things that we're doing? And instead, people just focus on the bad stuff, and that really upsets a lot of people.
What do they say in the news business? That if it bleeds, it leads?
Well, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that's one of
Right.
the reasons, honestly, that we're covering this story first is, quite frankly, that's what people are watching out there. Now, is this my cup of tea? Obviously, you can probably tell not necessarily, but it's still really big out there. Let me just show you one more. This is another parody one, which will bring you up to date here. Whitney in every episode. They're all very, very similar here, Brother Jones, to be honest with you.
I didn't go to Vegas for a number of reasons. I wanted to avoid the drama. I really wanted to focus on my family. I wasn't invited. And so because of those reasons, all my own personal decisions that I made, that's why. And then we have Demi, which is a whorish fucking name, by the way, trying to say she's a 9 out of 10 on the Mormon scale, which is just absolutely crazy. To me, a true devout Mormon. You know, the worst thing about getting in an argument with a friend is having to buy a new house. I'm so sick of moving somewhere every 2 months and buying a new home, getting in an argument, and having to move. It's ridiculous. And I cannot get over not being forgiven for my RSV video. But Taylor get forgiven for admitting that she had consensual sex on the internet? Tell me, what about that's fair? I hate all the drama. That's why I left the group chat and I unfollowed all of the girls on Instagram, and nobody sent me an edible arrangement. Is that friendship? I mean, not to me. Demi is all bent out of shape because she told me a personal, intimate story off camera about something involving pork tenderloins. So being the good friend that I am, I wrapped up a pork tenderloin and I brought it to a very special party at her house where I knew her husband would be. So she would open it and we would have a good laugh. And suddenly it's my fault that she can't take a joke. I'm so pissed at her.
That's pretty much the entire season right there from those particular highlights. That'll give you everything that you need to know about this. It's absolutely absurd. It is ridiculous, and it's still going to be a big news article. Last thoughts here on the secret lives of Mormon wives here, Brother Jones.
Heck, I think I'll watch that just to see all the different hairdos.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts out there. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you could leave us a comment on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. We'd be very grateful for that. Now, transitioning to something perhaps a little bit more seriously, we have lawyers filing to dismiss a lawsuit over tithing fraud against the LDS Church's investment arm. And this just broke a couple of days ago. Let's bring you up to speed on this one. The LDS Church and Ensign Peak, its portfolio, its clandestine hedge fund, are at the center of several lawsuits, with one recently being filed in January. According to a September 10 filing, the church's lawyers are seeking to dismiss a lawsuit filed at the end of October by Daniel Chappell, Mason Christensen, and John Oakes. The motion to dismiss argued that the plaintiffs were improperly disparaging the church and Ensign Peak without any viable claim against the church or Ensign Peak. Now, I know you've read this article here, Brother Jones. Are these plaintiffs improperly disparaging the church, or do they have a legitimate reason to believe that their tithing was solicited under fraudulent circumstances?
Yeah, this is actually a very interesting case, which I hope will be advanced so we can see how it comes out. But I haven't yet, but I will probably read the actual filings and all, the legal briefs with the complaints and all that. They're actually quite interesting to read. They often tell a story, cause you to ask more questions, which I think are interesting and valid and worth consideration.
Yeah, let's go on a little bit more from the article here. The plaintiffs claim that the LDS Church defrauded them by not immediately using their tithing donations for religion or charity, but instead investing their donations in Ensign Peak and hoarding them, according to the filing. Holding and investing the church's reserve fund is a charitable function the law explicitly approves, the filing argued. The defense is arguing against each of the plaintiffs' claims of fraud or fiduciary duty, noting the suit does not show a relationship between the plaintiffs and Ensign Peak. The plaintiffs filed the suit after Utah's 3-year statute of limitations for fraud cases, according to the motion. The court is also unable to determine materiality without violating the First Amendment. So this is very interesting here, because obviously most members of the church, I guess they don't have a relationship with Ensign Peak, because you give your donation to the church and then the church then passes that money along to Ensign Peak. So they're saying that you have no standing to sue Ensign Peak since you haven't established a relationship with them. And of course, the entire thrust of this is what the plaintiffs are saying here. I gave money to the church, donations freely to the church, but it was under the auspice that my donation will be used to alleviate the human suffering on this planet, and not to be used to enrich egg-headed stockholders in Tesla, Microsoft, and Apple, which is what a lot of the money does. How do you feel about this entire case here? Of course, the church has been sued many times for tithing refunds and has almost never given a penny back in tithing. But what are your overall thoughts here on this particular suit here? What do you think is going to happen, and how do you feel about the case in general?
I'm very interested in this issue, this whole case. If Ensign Peak, if members who gave money to the church don't have a relationship with Ensign Peak, if there's no legal basis there, then that seems like a pretty convenient loophole in the law, that the church can take your money and just give it to somebody else and then they are not responsible for it. That seems rather odd to me. The financial issues with the church that have come out in the last 5 years are really, really important. They were very upsetting to me. I hope that things progress. I mean, I know there's some ongoing lawsuits, and one of our lawyer friends would say, if you can't get a case dismissed if you don't ask, which is what they've done. Yeah, I mean, we'll just keep following the case and seeing where this goes. But this is a very important issue for everybody, I think.
Yeah, now we covered this very carefully on the Mormon News Roundup. You might say that I'm a bit obsessed about it, and maybe I have a peculiar fascination with church finances. Let's just say that these plaintiffs were able to win, and that there were a number of other copycat lawsuits that were able to gain traction. Is this type of thing that you would sign up for as a class action litigant?
I probably would. I think I would. I mean, if the church is anything, it is most concerned about its money. Okay. There's many policies and procedures surrounding financial matters that go far beyond other spiritual issues, you might say. I think I would. I think it's an incredible breach of trust and about what's happened with the finances of the church.
Yeah, a lot of members have called it a crisis of confidence. Certain things can be forgiven, oversights, sins of omission, not telling the full story about certain church history items that could possibly be forgiven as either incompetence or people just trying to make people stay in the boat. I guess I could look past that. But deliberate fraud and generations of misstatements to the federal government, to the members, all for the purpose of soliciting additional donations because the church knew that if the members knew how much that the church had in Ensign Peak, which is hundreds of billions of dollars, that they might not give a donation. That is beyond the pale. And as you mentioned, the church, so many people have leveled the accusation against the church that it acts really much more like a corporation that dabbles in religion rather than a religion that dabbles in the corporate sphere, because so much of what the church does is corporate in nature. It's very legalistic, and its finances are absolutely extremely important to it. In fact, the church released a couple of months ago a new gospel topics essays on finances, which I've reviewed before, which is an absolute tragedy of an essay. It tells you nothing about the church's finances, but it's obviously a very important issue here. Any last thoughts on church finances in general before we head over to the next article?
I want to mention something. A few years ago, I used to work in accounting, and there's an agency out there called Dun & Bradstreet. Accountants would know this because they use this for like credit checks. And I remember hearing that there were about 8,500 business entities that have been created under the corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 8,500. That is a lot. That I believe, would only be in the United States. I do think the church has an obligation to be transparent when they're using other people's money.
The Truth and Transparency Foundation, which was founded by Ryan McKnight and Ethan Dodge, which has eventually folded up, unfortunately, due to lack of donations, it documented those, as you said, those Dun & Bradstreet corporation names. A lot of the church's real estate property is incorporated in one name and one name only, meaning each one has an individual name. So the Springville Fourth Ward will be its own incorporated entity, and certain real estate parcels that the church has, that's where you're getting those 8,500 different LLCs or things that go along with that. I don't know the technical term. That's because of how the church does its real estate. And I'm sure that there's a rationale that's behind that. I don't know if it's so that if you sue the church so that it's not all under one.
It's probably
name.
Risk management, almost most likely risk management. Yeah, right. So it's a risk management strategy.
Probably right. It's probably about risk management. And that's one of the reasons that, like, Catholic dioceses, for instance, are independently incorporated, is so that if you sue one, you can't sue them all. But this is the difference between the Mormon church and many other churches, is that the entire entity of the church is a corporation's soul, which means that all of those are really rolled up under President Russell M. Nelson. So if you are able to sue the church and you are able to win a fraud case, and then there are punitive damages that are associated with it, it's not just going to be at your local individual stake level or even at the area level. The church is really the giant mega church. It is the mega church of mega churches out there. And one of these tithing lawsuits, if there are punitive damages, could bring the church to its knees. So that's why everybody's watching the space very carefully. And I'm very fascinated by this. So, hey, jumping to our next article here, there's a lot of stuff, not just in finance and in soapbox reality TV, but the wheels are coming off here in politics. We're over here in the United States. And of course, we have the election that is taking place here in not too distant future here. I'm in Washington, D.C., and we have political fever with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris here. But the wheels are coming off, according to an article here. Internal revolt reported as Arizona's Mormons grapple with the GOP. And this is what this particular article is arguing, or at least showing. Mormon voters have in recent years been defecting from the Democratic Party in small but increasing numbers, which took their population core state of Utah from a 42-point GOP rout in 2012 to just over 20 points in 2020. There seems to be a mass erosion here, and Republicans seem to be disaffiliating themselves from the grand old party. And that certainly is a problem and spells trouble for Donald Trump, because Arizona is an important swing state. In Arizona, which has a significant LDS population, An unusually high 18% of voters went for President Joe Biden, contributing to his win of just over 10,000 votes. Now, obviously, Arizona was very, very close, and it is one of those most important swing states out there. And typically, Latter-day Saints are conservative in their political leanings, and yet an unusually high percentage of them went for Joe Biden. And as we'll talk about just a little bit more, a lot of them seem to be going for Kamala Harris. Brother Jones, how is it that, the Republican Party and the Mormon Church have really been great bedfellows for many generations? Obviously, there's been some exceptions out there with Dieter Uchtdorf or James Faust or Hubie Brown have been Democrats, but it's been a very good relationship. And now the seams are coming apart here, and it may have a serious impact. I mean, honestly, if Arizona swings to Donald Trump, or if it's a toss-up, it could decide the election. In fact, quite frankly, the Mormon vote in Arizona could decide this election. That is not too far-fetched of a statement. But why is it that Mormons are not having such a great relationship with the GOP as the polls are showing in Arizona and in many other locations?
Some of this could have to do with Donald Trump himself. Maybe it's a shift in awareness, shift in values. There's probably a lot of factors.
Well, the church in the Deseret News and in its publications continuously runs editorials maligning Donald Trump over and over again, including front page editorials that absolutely slam the Donald repeatedly. And that does have an impact on faithful Latter-day Saints. The church doesn't do that directly, but it does it through its editorial page, which we all know basically synthesizes what the brethren's opinion is about politics. And in fact, it encourages Latter-day Saints not to vote single party. And most people interpret that as well as a shot against Donald Trump. I don't think it is too far of a stretch to say that Mormon leadership do not support Donald Trump in any shape or form, in any manner. And that, I think, has an effect across the pews. And in the article, it says that seeking their support for the third time, Mr. Trump appears to be dividing the state's Mormons more than ever, according to interviews with more than a dozen Mormon voters and state political analysts, which could give Vice President Kamala Harris an edge. One such voter, Mike Badgett, said of Trump's relationship with religious voters, "People in my moderate circle of friends are watching and saying, I can no longer do this. I think the wheels are coming off of this agreement." And Trump's agenda was always a relatively poor fit for the LDS Church. While it aligned with him on some traditional issues like abortion, promotes support for immigration and refugees far more than similarly conservative denominations, the Times reported. So Donald Trump in Utah did win, but it was not in the last elections, did definitely win, but it was not an overwhelming consensus. And it seems like Donald Trump's personality, his particular morals, now that he's been adjudicated as a convicted felon, that is unpalatable with Latter-day Saints who typically view moral issues as very important. What are your last thoughts here on the upcoming U.S. election, especially with regards to Mormons shifting the balance in Arizona? Again, if Kamala Harris wins Arizona, that could be a big stepping stone towards the presidency.
Well, yeah, the news I'm reading is that Harris is leading pretty strongly right now in the polls. I will just say this. I hope whatever happens, that the transfer of power is peaceful and that the Constitution is not hanging by a thread. How's that?
The White Horse Prophecy. Yes, sir. Absolutely. I do have a video that's out there on that. If it does hang by a thread, though, I don't think you're going to be able to help out with it while you're still in Thailand. Is that a fair statement?
Hey, I get to vote from here, too.
Oh, do you? Oh, right. Of course. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll see what's happening here. I'm always fascinated with the election, and especially the idea that a modern political candidate is directly, as we saw in that last particular clip here, is directly soliciting donations or, votes from Mormons. That's unprecedented. You typically don't see that kind of outreach here, as I saw in this last little clip here. She's stepping up outreach directly to Mormon voters because she knows that they are basically swing voters in Arizona. They typically vote for Republican, but considering Donald Trump's general unpalatableness to the Mormon constituents, she knows that she's going to be able to capitalize that. And if she does, that could have a big impact on the election. I like to think that Mormons are going to decide this election. I
was just going to say, maybe the Mormon women are wanting to vote for a woman too. That could be playing into this some.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I just like to live in the fantasy that Mormons are going to call the shots on this election. I like that idea. I don't know if it's accurate, but I definitely will. Now, speaking of politics here, we have the disgraced ex-Mormon here, Tim Ballard here. He's still making lots of news here in the United States. He's still a big figure out there, the supposed OUR founder and child rescuer, who the Sound of Freedom movie was based on his supposed rescues of saving children from child sex trafficking in far-flung locales. He has come to Jesus here, Brother Jones. He's been baptized in the Holy Spirit. He's an ex-Mormon now. He's no longer a Mormon. Praise the Lord. Let's see what's going on with Timmy Ballard. Brother Jones, I cannot help but see that this is absolute peak cringe here. This is one of the most hypocritical individuals that I've come across here. He supposedly is doing child rescuing, only no child has ever been demonstrated that he's been rescued. The women who were associated with it, who were with him, said that he sexually harassed them, sexually abused him, and other donors said that he extorted millions of dollars, all in the name of a sham. And yet here he is, coming to Jesus, having an emotional experience, and everyone is on board with this. This is absolute peak cringe for me.
Yeah, I have some pretty strong opinions about this character. I'll try to tone it down. I don't want to add suffering to the world, but he and Glenn Beck came to my part of the world several years ago.
Really?
I think strictly to just, yeah, you can find it on Glenn Beck's website. I think they came over here just to make a video to raise money. And I think Tim Ballard is a complete fraud. I think he's smoke and mirrors through and through.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he had gone to Thailand. And, you know, Thailand, unfortunately, is one of those areas where child sex trafficking is an issue here. But you're saying that instead of actually doing anything to solve the problem, he just shot a promotional video?
Well, you can find the video on Glenn Beck's website. They had some meeting with the police. They had some kind of office opened up here for a time, but they didn't really work out of the office. I passed by it. There was nothing going on there, but I used to follow Glenn Beck. I used to think he was a good guy, but again, I think these people literally are just great storytellers, and they know how to raise money through telling stories.
Yeah, I used to follow Glenn Beck as well, and it's come to find out that his association with Tim Ballard makes me greatly question his entire persona. He used to be this conservative firebrand who had a lot of very interesting ideas and was very compelling and had lots of cool, out of the box ideas about how to help our government and save our society. And he was very interesting and compelling. And then all of a sudden his associations have really called into question his entire persona and his morality. Any association with Tim Ballard is going to tarnish one's legacy. And just a couple last thoughts here. You know, this is really what religion does to a person. It says that you don't have to be held to account for the evil that you've inflicted on this world. And Tim Ballard is responsible for an immense amount of suffering, at least from my perspective. And I've seen absolutely no good that this person has done. But religion teaches you that it's not about what you do. It's about what you believe. Your actions don't matter because you've come to Jesus, or you believe in the Quorum of the 15, or you follow Allah, or whatever it is. As long as you believe what you're supposed to believe, then your actions, well, those are secondary. And that's an entirely bankrupt idea. And that's, people say, well, you know, how can you have morality without religion? Well, how can you have morality with religion? And Tim Ballard is a perfect example of the hypocrisy that religion teaches you. He solicited all of his donations from naive Latter-day Saints by deceiving them in the name of his beloved God. And now that he's been disgraced from the Mormon faith, he's going to take up his new religion. He's going from religion to religion and just duping people all over again. I don't understand how people cannot see through this man's absolute facade, and it really upsets me. Any last thoughts here on Tim Ballard here, Brother Jones?
Well, I hope this story is followed through, that there's more investigations, that more information comes out to show what was really going on behind the curtain. Let's have some evidence about what's really going on. You know, it's a little bit similar to the idea of the church often doesn't really care what you believe. They just care that you're loyal, or they maybe don't care what you do, that all they care about is if you're loyal. I think there's some problems with that idea.
Yeah, there definitely is. Now, transitioning to our next article here. Once again, the church has been trying to build a temple in the community of Fairview, Texas, and it was downvoted 7-0. And so far, the town of Fairview is 1 and Goliath is 0. And the mayor there, Mayor Lesnar, has not stopped his messaging to what he calls corporate church headquarters in Salt Lake City. And he recently released this. This is provided by the Business Wire here on September 16th. Mayor Lesnar of the town of Fairview, Texas, tells the LDS Church, do not mess with our community. And let's see what Mayor Lesnar is saying this time here. The town of Fairview, Texas announced today that it will stand firm in its opposition to plans by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints proposal to build a 45,000 square foot temple at 65 feet high with a 173-foot spire that would tower over homes in the area zoned for residential construction. The plans were downvoted by the city council after a 4-hour council meeting. And Fairview has become the latest in a string of communities trying to stand up against the powerful and wealthy LDS Church. And Fairview is not alone in what it has become a trend of the church trying to impose its will on communities. And the church has been increasing its efforts to build more temples, generating an intense resistance from people in places like Bakersfield, California, Lone Mountain, Nevada, Cody, Wyoming, Heber Valley, Utah, and Tooele, Utah. So Brother Jones here, the church is trying to ram through these giant Masonic esoteric castles into these small communities and residential areas in which they do not fit, and that the zoning does not allow for such buildings. And this particular town and many others have stood up to the church in basically a David and Goliath situation, where the towns are David and the mega corporation, which is Mormon Incorporated, valued at approximately $300 billion, is coming up shorthanded, at least in Fairview so far, although there will be additional litigation. What are your thoughts on Mayor Lesnar standing up to Russell Marion Nelson Sr.?
Well, I congratulate the town for taking a stand for what they believe. They're standing for something. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Sadly, in America, the one with the deepest pockets often wins. There's a simple solution to this whole thing, and millions of dollars don't have to be expended on all of this stuff. The adjustments can be made and everybody can be made happy. Thought I heard something about temples not needing to be extravagant. I think Elder Irene said something to that effect recently at somebody's birthday party. Come on. This is just ridiculous. Think of the amount of waste that's gone in to this whole process, and how it could be solved with simple, treat your neighbor like you want to be treated. Done.
Well, people are pushing back against the communities that have rejected these temples and saying that this is based on religious bigotry, and that it's really a persecution of the LDS faith, and that it's all, the adversary and the work of Satan. Is this religious bigotry that Mayor Lesnar is now doubling down on, Brother Jones?
Religious bigotry. I thought he said that their church is welcome to build their temple. They just need to adjust the specifications.
That's the consistent message here, is that it has nothing to do with religion. No religion can put in a building of that size. No corporation, no private person can build a home of that size. This has nothing whatsoever to do with religion at all.
And the largest religious building in the area is already the LDS Church?
That's a very good point as well. I don't see this as a matter of religious persecution. Of course, this is going to be litigated through our LUPA and in other means. And the church has come out on top in virtually every locale that it has litigated. The church generally wins. And like you said, he with the deepest pockets is the one that usually makes the rules. And that's a sad reality. But the old saying here in the United States, don't mess with Texas. Mayor Lesnar appears to be saying, we are ready for you. We are going to stand firm, and we will stay and fight for our community and the values that we uphold in our particular location, which he believes are lawful and legal. So I'll be fascinated to see what is happening here. And this isn't the only temple that is in the news. Of course, the church builds so many temples that you can't help but cover it. And the construction of the LDS temple here is beginning in Cody, Wyoming. And this was also after years of infighting, multiple lawsuits on both sides, a huge amount of consternation. And you can see these prefabricated pieces here, Brother Jones, that are sitting on this particular temple site in the rustic area here of Cody, Wyoming, a beautiful location. This is one of these so-called prefabricated temples, and these were built together. These pieces of the temple were put together by a company out of Georgia that's called Blocks, Bloxx, and they're just waiting to be assembled, kind of like an IKEA temple. This could be assembled in only a short period of time, and this temple has been given the green light, and the temple construction has started. Let's check it out.
Construction is officially underway on a new LDS temple in Cody, Wyoming, even after legal hurdles. But opponents plan to take that case all the way to the Wyoming State Supreme Court. Hundreds of people attended planning meetings in Cody for months fighting light pollution. However, the city approved the plan last year. Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods filed suit, but a district court judge ruled in favor of the Mormon Church. While the appeals continue, construction won't stop.
They do have a building permit, and they can start whenever they want, even though the appeal may go forward. They're taking a chance of a judge making a decision against the church, but they feel very comfortable after the judge's decision in district court that they are wanting to go forward, and the church feels very comfortable that they can go ahead and start construction now.
Through all the back and forth, LDS church members say it is their constitutional right of freedom of religion to build that temple.
So what we're seeing in the Protect Our Cody Neighborhood signs there is not no temple in our community. If you'll notice what the signs say, it just says relocate the community. In other words, it would fit much better in downtown rather than in its current location. But the church has won yet again. It's starting to build its temple. And even though this will go to the Wyoming Supreme Court, it looks like we got another victory for Mormon Incorporated.
We had a medical doctor at the helm for COVID-19. I think we may have a lawyer at the helm for court.
Yeah, the church's lawyers really have a vast level of influence over the church in general. In fact, we covered, it was about a month ago, the church's change in its transgender policy updates. And according to Latter-day Stories, those were not preyed upon in the temple. Those were constructed by church lawyers. The Proclamation on the Family, for instance, is put together by church lawyers. So much of the church is run by lawyers. You know, I had somebody in my comment section, because I released a video about the Fairview Temple, who said, "We will not heed what the wicked may say," which is an old LDS hymn. "We will heed not what the wicked may say." And I responded back that alone curtain McConkey you will obey, because it seems like the church's lawyers call so many of the shots here. And the Quorum of the 15 really relies upon them for absolutely everything they do. In fact, half of the church senior leadership are lawyers or state Supreme Court judges. This is a really litigious organization, the church is, and they are not afraid to go to court at the drop of a hat.
Believe me, virtually everything that goes on operationally goes through something called legal review. If somebody's trying to do something or something new or some new thing going on, it has to go through legal review first. And oftentimes that means it's going to be held up for 6 months or a year before anything happens, like a new program or something. I don't think could be a more legalistic organization, especially religious organization in the United States.
Yeah, especially if you look at the General Handbook of Instruction, which is approximately 500 pages long, and it is laid out.
It's a legal document.
Yeah,
it's a legal document.
And it's crafted in such ways as to ensure that the church is not sued, or that the church can fight any of the lawsuits that come up based upon anything that it has. It is very legalistic. There's no doubt about that. In fact, really in the last General Conference, President Nelson put a footnote into his General Conference talk, because he was talking about tithing, in which he specifically said, well, even though I kind of alluded in my General Conference talk that if you pay tithing, that the Lord will bless you socioeconomically in this life, they put a footnote in there later that said, no, actually, those blessings might come later. It's very legalistic in everything that the church does. And that's our next article here. Look at this from Rebecca Biblioteca, the sometimes co-host of the Mormon News Roundup and also runs the Mormonish podcast here. She says the LDS Church is joining the city of Las Vegas in the lawsuit over the Lone Mountain Temple. And this is breaking news just a couple of days ago here. The LDS Church has asked to intervene and join in the Las Vegas lawsuit brought by residents over the Lone Mountain Temple. As it was in Cody, Wyoming and Heber Valley, Utah, this will almost guarantee and certainly will be granted. So not only is the church sued for tithing, not only is the church left, right, and center involved in lawsuits, they actually ask to get involved in lawsuits in places where they're not even being sued. They want to join in on these lawsuits. The church loves to sue people.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that headline that the church is joining Las Vegas. What is Las Vegas? Oh, Las Vegas is suing Lone Mountain?
Well, let's just review that one more time here. The LDS Church has asked to intervene and join the city of Las Vegas in a lawsuit brought by residents over the Lone Mountain temples. This was basically greenlighted in Las Vegas after a number of protests. But then certain city persons were going to sue the city of Las Vegas and say, no, we don't think that this temple should go through. So then the church is saying, well, we're going to join with the city of Las Vegas and use our legal resources to help Las Vegas fight that lawsuit so that Las Vegas, the city, doesn't have to pay as much out of pocket. And this is, of course, the irony here is that the church greased the wheels here in Lone Mountain by bribing or at least providing political donations to city council persons to get this approved to begin with. So they gave donations to city council persons, and now they're going to give additional church resources to get these temples over the finish line. Far from letting Yahweh, the Lord Almighty, get these temples approved, what really ends up happening is that there needs to be a massive amount of money for each one of these, not only for the temple construction itself, which is in the tens of millions of dollars, but in every single aspect of this. These are incredibly expensive endeavors, and the church, the lawsuits, they just keep rolling in.
Well, this will all fit in well with my joke of the day when we get there. So
now I got a couple of quick jokes here on my own here before they take us out. I try to do these news in about an hour here. And Jacob Hansen over there at the Thoughtful Faith Cult did a parody about Jacob Hansen and Julie Hanks. I think those are pretty amusing. I got about 2 joke videos here that are going to take us out before we do your joke.
I'm not some weirdo who's like obsessed with Julie Hanks. Dr. Hanks, Dr. Julie Hanks. Well, and Julie's on the same page. Julie Hanks, Julie Hanks, Julie Hanks, Julie Hanks is some terrible person. I don't know Julie Hanks. I'm like, Julie, go Julie. Hold on, Julie. Dr. Julie Hanks. Julie. I have nothing against Julie Hanks. Julie. Dr. Julie Hanks. Nothing personal against Dr. Hanks.
That's my joke of the week here is Jacob Hansen obsessed with Mormon, the Mormon Dr. Julie Hanks. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't follow that back and forth too much. I'm familiar with her. I'm familiar with him, TikTok or whatever that is. It's great at synthesizing all this stuff. But
now, are you following Nemo the Mormon, one of the most popular YouTubers out there? He is being threatened with having his membership removed. Any quick thoughts on that before I play this clip here? What do you think about the church coming after renegade podcasters and removing their church membership?
They can do that. How they do it, it's their business. But I think getting on BBC and becoming a leading commentator, I think that's what fanned the flames over all this. But I think he'll handle it with grace and wish him well.
Yeah, let's play this clip here and see what Nemo is saying about having his membership removed. And you're probably right. Once you get to a certain platform level, and if you are a continued critic of the church, then oftentimes we see the church taking action. Only having 4,000 subscribers right now with the Mormon News Roundup. By the way, if you can subscribe to this podcast, I would greatly appreciate that. Right now, I'm probably still under the radar, but who knows what will happen in the future. Let's see what Nemo's got to say.
Next week, I will be facing a church disciplinary council that will seek to determine if I am in apostasy. And what have I done that's apostate, you might ask? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Because you see, the church is refusing to give me any specific details of the charges against me. So I will be turning up to the meeting completely in the dark. As a result, I am hard at work preparing my defense, and this is where you can help me. I'm putting together a study of individuals who are willing to go on record and say that I did not weaken their faith, nor reduce their activity in the church. If that's you, or you'd just like to send me a message of support of any kind, make sure to send it in to nemoisinnocent@gmail.com by next Tuesday so I can forward it to my stake president. That email, once again, is nemoisinnocent@gmail.com. Make sure you follow to hear the outcome of my disciplinary hearing. Could I avoid excommunication?
Brother Jones, these excommunication hearings, as they used to be called, now they're called membership councils. They sure seem to be very, Iron Age or regressive. They won't even tell someone what they're being accused of doing in any specifics whatsoever. And do you think that Nemo the Mormon needs to be excommunicated? That's really the most important question here.
I don't know that he needs to be. I think it will satisfy some people, sort of remove him from access to meetings or other individuals maybe. But I do want to make one statement about this. Somebody high up caused the church to have a $5 million fine. $1 million from the church, $4 million from Ensign Peak. I would like to know if there's been any membership councils convened over that. And that seems like a pretty significant discretion, would you not say?
Yes, there seems to be some serious amount of irony about certain individuals running generations-long fraudulent activities with hundreds of thousands of misstatements that were done by senior leaders. That's what the settlement said. It wasn't just some accountant. It was the senior leaders of the church who did the illegal activities, and they set up the fake shell companies, and they defrauded the government and the members, and yet there has been no accountability there.
I would encourage everybody to just Google SEC settlement, LDS church or something. Go read the document. It's about 8.5 or 9 pages long, and it tells a very clear story that both sides agreed on. This was not persecution. This was not somebody out to get the church. This was done by senior leadership of the church. Are they being held accountable? I don't believe they are.
Yeah, they're not being held accountable, at least from my perspective. Otherwise, they should have gone through disciplinary councils, in my opinion. And yet I do not believe that they did, because there is no accountability in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for senior leaders. But if a podcaster says something that could be considered unflattering, well, they will need to be dealt with to the highest degree. And that's what you said earlier, Brother Jones, is it's all about loyalty. Nemo could be considered a disloyal individual, and therefore he needs to be dealt with, whereas President Eyring, President Nelson, and President Oaks are the most loyal people out there. And this is, once again, where actions don't matter. It's really a matter of thought control, because according to Joseph Smith, obedience is the first law of heaven, and staying in line, doing what you're told, keeping sweet, praying and obeying, staying in the good ship Zion, never questioning, never thinking, and doubting your doubts, that is valued above all else, and that includes personal conduct. And in my opinion, as a secular humanist, that's exactly backwards of the way that our morality should be executed. We should be placing the needs of our fellow men above all else. Now that is.
I was just going to say, on this note, I think literally what we've just stated, this is the crisis of conscience that so many of us have gone through. What is our conscience telling us versus what are we being told? This is it in a nutshell.
And that's really, the church doesn't teach you to appeal to your conscience, because when the prophet speaks, the thinking has been done. When the prophet speaks, the debate is over. In fact, if the prophet were to allegedly tell you something that wasn't right, you'd be blessed for it anyway. And this is the problem with telling people to abdicate your moral responsibility to a mega corporation, is that when that mega corporation inevitably makes bad decisions or illegal activities or shamefully hoards hundreds of billions of dollars, all of a sudden people can know that that is immoral, that's improper, that's shameful. And then all of a sudden their conscience is awakened when the church does everything that it can to pound your consciousness in your conscience into the ground and just tell you that whatever the Quorum of the 15 says is what you should do. That's where people start to have problems with faith. And I had Jana Reese on the program, and this is what led her directly, the SEC fine and the church's opaque nature of its finances led her to stop paying tithing, and so many other people as well. This is just always such a big issue. And I know that it happened in February of 2022, but it will still be an issue until it is dealt with. It is an open sore and a gaping wound. And the church considers this matter to be closed. But those of us who care about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and our family members that still attend church, this will never be closed until it is dealt with in a more substantial way. Any last thoughts on all of the news of this particular week here, Brother Jones?
No, it's a pretty good review. Lots of drama, lots of key issues going on. You know, a lot of the same figures are still in the news. Yeah, good review.
Nice. Now that does take us to our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week. And Brother Jones, what is the poll this week?
Yeah, what's your favorite change instituted by Russell Nelson?
Yes, it was his 100th birthday not long ago, and Nemo put out a very interesting video, which we've covered as well. But the Religion News Service actually did a poll of the 10 most interesting or most popular changes by President Nelson. And if you'd be the first person to take our poll, I'd appreciate that. And those of you out in the live chat, get ready to cast your votes as well. We release new episodes of the Mormon News Roundup every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have yet to miss a Sunday night in almost 3 years. You can set your clock on it. It is reliable. What is option number 1 here, Brother Jones?
Yeah, moving to a 2-hour church meeting schedule.
How do you like that change that President Nelson instituted?
I liked it, but I could never remember which Sunday was Sunday school, which Sunday was priesthood. I always got confused, you know.
It seems to be very popular, like you were referencing earlier. People enjoy less Mormonism for some reason. It is a conundrum, or it is an enigma. How about number 2?
Emphasizing home-based, come follow me gospel study.
And of course, this is the whole idea with going to 2-hour churches, that you're supposed to do the gospel study at home to replace the so-called third hour. How do you like this change that was instituted by President Nelson?
Well, anytime somebody can do their own study, I think that's a positive thing. Just make sure you stay in the right manuals.
That is true. That is true. Stay in the correlated curriculum. In other words, as President Nelson said, sources that you can trust. And the only trustworthy sources, of course, come from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And don't ask too many questions.
You bet. In fact, President Oaks said that when people are having a crisis of confidence, or they're having difficulties with church,
is not the answer.
May I suggest that research is not the answer? Right. Or how about number 3?
Using the full name of the church and avoiding Mormon. That's a great change. It's given us lots and lots of things to talk about.
It's good for news, but I don't think it's good in practicality, which is why I have not changed the name of the Mormon News Roundup, and I probably never will. How about number 4?
Allowing missionaries to call home weekly.
Now, what do you think about that one?
It's good for them to be able to communicate, but it also reduces the amount of control over their life. I think it's a double-edged sword, and I think that's exactly what's playing out in the missionary program.
Yeah, it's very good for mental health. It's very good for missionary flourishing. Staying in contact with your family is very important. Back when we were missionaries, you could only do that twice a year, once on Mother's Day, once on Christmas. Now you can call home every week. And perhaps I can't prove a causation, but I can certainly prove that there's a correlation that up to 30% of missionaries are now coming home early for various reasons. And it seems like what you're saying is that calling home weekly might be a part of that.
Maybe they have more chance to vent and share their feelings and process what's going on with them, and then they maybe more are deciding to leave. Yeah, it's definitely early returns are definitely way up. And about 10 years ago, I heard that this number was up. I heard from a stake president who was telling it. I had not heard anything about it, and he was kind of sharing some information that he had learned in a meeting of some kind. Apparently that number has gone through the roof. 30 years ago, that was a big deal, big deal, going home early. It'd be interesting to see if there's some study done to see how many, what was it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and what is it today? It'd be great to have some transparent numbers about that.
It certainly would. Now, anecdotally, I could say that it would probably be in the 80s, maybe 5%, in the 90s, only 10%, and now it's up to 30%, maybe even 35%. So, but calling home, I think, is a great change to the missionary program, because whether you call the Mormon Church or not a cult, I think is kind of a discussion that isn't worth having. I think that's a lame discussion that really has no meaning. But calling the missionary experience a cult-like experience, I think that is very accurate, and anything that can be done to make that a more healthy place for people to be is a positive change. So I am with President Nelson on number 4. Or how about number 5?
Allowing parents to accompany youth into bishops' interviews.
Yeah, this is something that Sam Young crusaded on for quite a bit of time. And now parents can go into bishops' youth interviews, but they don't have to. How do you feel about number 5 here, President Nelson's change, allowing parents to go in with their children into ecclesiastical interviews and meetings?
Sam Young is a hero. He's done incredible work for people in this community. Given everything that's happened and come out over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, related to abuse and that kind of thing, this is a no-brainer. This had to happen, so it's a good thing.
Yes, I definitely think it is a good thing as well. Let's go on to number 6, which is the church has now changed the 1-year waiting period between civil weddings and temple sealings. You can basically go to the temple much faster than you used to. Is this a good change for the church here, Brother Jones?
Yeah, they used to have a double standard. Outside of the U.S., you could go get sealed within a day or two. And then in the U.S., it was not that way. So it was a double standard that needed to be removed. Yeah, obviously this needed to happen. I suspect maybe more people will have civil weddings now, so more people can be included in that important event rather than being excluded.
Yeah, one of the reasons that the church had to do that internationally is that a lot of locales wouldn't recognize just a temple sealing as a marriage. So unless you wanted to live in sin for a year's period of time, you had to be able to have a shorter period of time in between the sealing and the actual government recognized marriage. And in the United States, it wasn't. The United States recognizes a Mormon sealing as a wedding. So now it's all been unified. Or how about number 7?
Allowing women and youth to serve as witnesses for baptisms.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I suppose it's a good thing, but it just causes more questions to be asked, I suppose. But I think it's relatively inconsequential.
Okay, number 8.
Ending the relationship with the Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah, I'll just weigh into this one because I had my kids in the church program in the Boy Scouts of America before it was severed. I believe that was in 2018 or 2019. And I think that was a devastating bad decision, in my opinion. We had to put them into a different organization with Boy Scouts. Now, they've all completed through. They've all gotten the Eagle Scouts finally. But how do you feel about the church severing its relationship with the Boy Scouts? And that was under President Nelson's leadership. Was that a smart move?
Well, I think it was decided while President Monson was still president. And of course, President Monson had a very close relationship and long history with the Boy Scouts. I have mixed emotions about this because I think the Boy Scouts is or was a good organization. I know there's been this terrible lawsuit and the terrible things that have happened, and maybe they could have fixed that. But I think the Boy Scouts provided a lot of very positive things for young men such as myself. So it's kind of sad to see that happen. I do not see a useful replacement yet.
Yeah, I definitely haven't seen a replacement. I grew up through the Boy Scouts through the church. I was also a Boy Scout leader in a couple of different congregations in the LDS church. It will always hold a place that is near and dear to my heart. Of course, we came to find out on Scouts Honor, that documentary, where the church didn't run the background checks on so many Scout leaders, and it led to horrific abuse, not only in the church, but because the church would not run the background checks in the Mormon church, and because it represented 30% of the congregations in Boy Scouting, that the Scouts in general didn't run background checks on its leaders. So it's not just the abuse that happened in the congregations. The Mormon church is at least partially responsible for those other abuses as well. So in some ways, I'm glad that that stain upon the church has ended. But as you mentioned, there's been no replacement, and it's unfortunate how it all ended up. It's really a sad situation. How about number 9?
Changing temple rituals to expand the role of Eve and give greater equality to women.
Yeah, and you leaked some of that information to me, but President Nelson has tinkered around with the sacred cow of Mormonism, which is the temple endowment, a number of times. He feels no compunction to follow Joseph Smith's injunction that the temple ordinances were supposed to remain unchanged forever, but at least some of the more regressive anti-women covenants and other things have been removed. How do you feel about President Nelson's changes in the temple endowment?
On this particular one, I will admit that the changes to the endowment are a peculiar thing in something that we thought wasn't supposed to change or was revealed. That's what happens in church with continuing revelation.
Okay, and then we also have the final example here, which is number 10. What's number 10 here, Brother Johns?
Calling the first Asian American and the first Brazilian into the Q12.
How do you feel about the diversity efforts of President Nelson?
This is the different flavors that he mentioned, that we would have some new flavors in the quorum. I think it's certainly a good thing. I think gives representation. I think they need to call a Filipino in soon because there's a lot of Filipinos in the church. A Latino would be good, somebody who native Spanish speaker. So I think those are definitely positive things because people, they want to be able to relate to their leadership.
Yeah, they certainly do. Now let's run over those 10 choices for those of you out in the live chat. Thanks so much for joining us and get ready to cast your votes. Let's just run through these real quick one more time. 2-hour church, come follow me, getting rid of the word Mormon, weekly missionary phone calls, parents in youth bishops interviews, 1-year waiting periods removal, allowing women to be witnesses in the temple, getting rid of the Boy Scouts, changing the rituals in the temple, or the diversity in the quorum of the 12. Brother Jones, would you be the first person to take our poll? I'd be very grateful for that. What is the best change that President Nelson has instituted in the church since he took the reins approximately 6 years ago? You're going to be the first person to take our poll. Those people out there in the live chat are casting their votes, but your opinion is very important.
My favorite, I would have to say, certainly would be 2-hour church for sure.
Less Mormonism is better Mormonism. Is that what you're trying to say here, Brother Jones?
Yeah, 3 hours, well, and where I live, time is precious, but most of the Christian world goes for what, an hour maybe? Those that do
45
go.
minutes,
so
yeah.
45 minutes to an hour. I've been to a Catholic Mass before. I will say that there's a lot of standing and sitting in a Catholic Mass. You can't really sleep through a Catholic Mass. I mean, it's easy to sleep through 2 hours of church. It's hard not to.
Yeah, this was actually a poll that was put together by Jana Reese over there at the Religion News Service. And the actual results of the poll here, they are. The news survey says, and the winner is 2-hour church. Among the top changes President Nelson has made, U.S. Mormons love 2-hour church best of all, according to new data. And as we were joking around, it appears that people enjoy less Mormonism rather than more. That is the Mormon News Roundup poll of the week. That does take us to our final segment, which is the Mormon joke of the week. And I believe that you have Have that for us, Brother Jones.
So, Divas, did you know how cold it was last winter in Salt Lake City?
No.
It was so cold. The Curtin McConkie legal team was walking from City Creek over to the church office building, and they had their hands in their own pockets.
Oh, very nice. Okay, I got it. And that's pretty good. Pretty nice. Yeah, appreciate that joke. That's a new one. Now, by the way, Brother Jones, what projects are you working on?
What am I working on? I've always got projects I'm working on. I actually do some art curation, and I do a lot of family history work, actually. Travel quite a bit, but take care of my mother-in-law and try to enjoy each day. And I do a lot of walking. Life is good.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Good luck to you out there in Thailand. Now, as far as the projects that I'm working on, I just released this week, Is Michelle Stone a Fraud? Where I took a look at the Mormon polygamy denier who says that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy and that Doctrine and Covenants section 132 is actually a forgery and blames many of the church's problems on Brigham Young and his contemporaries. I took a deep dive into her subscribers and proved without question that her channel is fraudulent in its entire conception. You don't want to miss that episode. It is a big deal. And I also released here, Brother Jones, with the help of Sandra Tanner, the famous OG Mormon researcher, the problems in the LDS essays on plural marriage. I'm really so proud of this particular episode. I walk you through all of the particulars of polygamy, all the way from biblical times up through Joseph Smith documenting beyond question that he was a polygamist, and through the manifesto and the second manifesto, all the way up until modern times, including the church's responses to the polygamy debacle in its 4 essays on plural marriage. This is all done within 1 hour. It is one of my absolute best works. It is not to be missed. And finally, we have Real Talk Mormonism, where we have live calls and conversations. This is a call-in show where you can interact with me, your humble host, through the airwaves, and we will talk all things Mormonism. These are the type of projects that I'm working on, and tomorrow I'm releasing a review of Baptists at Our Barbecue. This is an old LDS comedy classic where a man moves into a Baptist community and all hell breaks loose. Have you ever watched Brother Jones' Baptists at Our Barbecue?
You know, I do not think I have seen that one. Is it similar to Mobsters and Mormons or something like that?
Very, very similar. This is all in that same way there. Early 2000s, a very amusing stuff. Has some of the same folks in it. It's a real hoot, and we will give you this review in just a few minutes. One of my favorite ones out there. I'd like to thank our Patrons and channel members out here. I'm going to name them, which I don't always do. Elizabeth Elster, The Tear in the Chair, Orson, Andrea, Carol, David, Blaine, Anthony, Brent, Colette, Michael, Eric, and Sophronia. Thanks so much for being Patreon members. And over there on YouTube, thanks so much for being members. That's Garrick, Sarah, Melissa, Mark, Emeric, Badass Peacemaker, The Cat Lady, Dave Summers, and Lee Mortensen. Thanks so much for being a supporter to the Mormon News Roundup. I really appreciate it. Brother Jones, thank you so much for ruminating with me on the great and spacious Beehive. Thanks for joining the Mormon News Roundup.
Good to be here, Divas. It's nice to visit, and I wish everybody well. And I would just say, be kind to your neighbor.
Very good advice. I'd like to give a shout out to Weird Alma on Bandcamp.com for this episode's music. Always think celestial, and remember,
no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
The diddly whack mag Mormon daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming, cause it's cool to be a Mormon. I'm the blackjack saint on a crack daddy, oh. I'm the diddly whack mag Mormon daddy, and I'm spiritual.
And remember.
No unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from moving forward. Did I say that right?
No unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
Oh, from progressing. Okay, one more time.